Okay, everyone, welcome. We are continuing our journey through these very important Torah portions. And this week, we have reached Toldot. And we're going to jump 2 generations. There seems to be this sudden movement from Avraham Avinu straight to Yitzchak, excuse me, and down to Yaakov, to Jacob. And it's almost as though we don't give so much time to Yitzchak. It seems to be Avraham Avinu and his wife Sarah and everything they do, and they're running around, they're helping guests. And we see Yaakov and his struggles of being with his family, having to leave his family because of his twin brother who wants to kill him. We'll find out this week why his twin brother wanted to kill him. And yet Yitzchak doesn't get too much Torah time. What's going on over here? What is the secret behind this 3-generational gap that we are going to follow? And the title of the parsha really fits in very, very well. It's Toldot. Toldot means generations, or maybe more accurately, descendants. And we know that Avraham Avinu was Ish Chesed. Abraham was all about helping others. He helped others emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially. His whole life was all about the other. I just watched a fantastic TED Talk by a great rabbi who recently left us, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory. And he says, you walk into most bookstores and they're all about self-help. You just type in on Amazon, self-help, you get thousands and thousands of titles. And he says that's a great shame, because maybe the best form of self-help is other help, helping other people. But what do you think about that? I want to fix me. I want to make me feel great. It's all about me and I, as he said, which he got into trouble for, actually made the international news. We got a lot of the iPhone, the iPad, the iPod, the iMac. It's all about me, he said. I mean, he said it, tongue-in-cheek, and yet the international press went crazy. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs goes up against Apple. I don't think that was his raison d'etre. He was making an observation, right? Self-help, and yet we see in the Torah that self-help isn't sufficient, because Noah was all about self-help, and Abraham distinguished himself from Noah by being other help. Mr. Chesed. And then suddenly we meet someone very, very different, Yitzchak. And very little is written about Yitzchak, Isaac in the Torah. He's a very, if I dare say it, a mysterious figure. And he followed a very, very different path to his father. And yet the Torah begins in this week's parasha. This is Genesis chapter 25, verse 19. Ve'ele toldot Yitzchak. These are the generations of Yitzchak, ben Avraham, the son of Abraham. Avraham holided Yitzchak, and you should know that Abraham had Yitzchak. So it's a mirror verse. It's giving us this 1-2-2-1 pattern as it goes through. These are the vision of Yitzchak. Yitzchak was the son of Abraham, and Abraham was the father of Yitzchak. What is going on over there? How do we get to this double pattern? Why is Abraham being mentioned at all? Because right now, we're going to talk about Yitzchak, and then very, very quickly, we're going to talk about his twin sons, Jacob and Esau. What is the secret behind this? Abraham, Yitzchak, Abraham, Yitzchak. What's this 1-2-2-1 formation? And there's many answers given to this. One being that people doubted that Yitzchak was actually a son of Abraham, because Abraham couldn't have children for many, many years. His wife was kidnapped. All of a sudden, she gets pregnant, which was connected to that because they prayed for Avimelech, who had kidnapped her, and eventually, in the merit of that prayer, she ended up getting pregnant herself. So God made it that Abraham and Yitzchak looked exactly the same. There was no distinction. Everyone knew the same size, shape, color, everything. There was no doubt that Yitzchak was the son of Abraham. That rumor very quickly passed. I read something very interesting, though, a very different perspective on this Abraham-Isaac thing. Listen very carefully. You know, I don't know if you have children, if you're watching now, and if you don't, God willing, if you merit it one day, please God, you will. And yet we see that all of us want our children to be exactly like us. We want them to be mini versions of ourselves. What we love, we want them to love. What we eat, we want them to eat. What interests us, we want to interest them. And my son just walked in and out. Perfect timing. Close the door, please, Sadiq. And everything, time could be better. And everything that we do, we want to be in them. And if they don't live up to our ideals and our ways and our view of life, we feel like we failed. It's like, why did I put all this effort and energy? I just want my child to be exactly like me. Maybe better looking, maybe some more hair, but besides that, give them everything I am. And yet, very, very quickly, we see that Yitzchak has a complete different personality, a different mission, a different life force, different strategy. Everything about him is different from Abraham, and there isn't one iota anywhere in the Midrash, in the Torah, in the Gemara, nowhere in Jewish scriptures do you ever see Abraham being upset about that. You would have thought Abraham, who gave his entire life to welcoming thousands and thousands of guests into his home, you would expect that his son should also follow his path. And if he doesn't, Abraham should be like, come on, boy, you know what we're about. We want to spread ethical and moral monotheism. Boop, off you go. Go and spread it. Be just like me and Mummy Sarah, making bread, bringing guests in, welcoming Mr. Chesed. And Yitzhak follows a completely different path. He's an outwardly focused, he's inwardly focused. Abraham had a yeshiva that had thousands and thousands of students. Eshel Abraham, he would feed them, take care of them, and influence them. Yitzchak had one student, Jacob. That was it. And Abraham, garnished, doesn't affect him at all. That's your derech. We have to understand, and this is something we need to repeat to ourselves all the time, whether it's children or students or employees. Just because we have a way of connecting spiritually, emotionally, psychologically to God, to Judaism, to Torah, it doesn't mean that's the same path for everyone that we teach, and definitely not for our children. And so the Torah goes out of its way to say, you know that Abraham and Yitzchak, they were complete opposites. Abraham is going to be influencing the world. Yitzchak is breaking himself down, right? Working on himself, literally willing to kill himself for the cause on the mountain with the binding of Isaac. Such a different whole vision of his father, and yet his father's like, you go. This is who you are. You got to find your own. There's many ways, many derachim, many paths that are open to lead us. And Yitzchak is going to end up having the same situation with his son Yaakov. And of course, his other son, Esau. Because both of them are going to find their own paths. And both had a very good set path. One strayed considerably, and one stuck with it through thick and through thin. And so, Yitzchak and Rivka, after many, many years, finally managed to get pregnant. We mentioned this before, that all of the Ima'ot, all of our foremothers, had tremendous trouble and challenge when it came to having children. And this was very difficult for them, because there's nothing they wanted more than to build Klal Yisrael, to build the Jewish people. This was their raison d'etre. This is why they didn't want to have kids just to dress them up and push them around the bugaboo. That's just a bonus. What they wanted was to create a whole new life. And they realized something big. They may not have realized the scope of the influence they were going to have. Most of us don't when we go through challenges and through parts of our lives which are growth-oriented. And yet the repercussions were eternal. And so that's what happened. And now Yitzchak marries Rebecca, Rivka, and they start to have children. And eventually, at a very old age, Rivka becomes pregnant. And it's not a regular pregnancy. She knows something's up. Yeah, she is pregnant and she feels a battle inside her. And so she goes to ask God, says the Torah. She goes to ask God because she wanted to know what's happening. V'yidrotzu abane b'kirba. And she felt that there was a fight inside her. And the Torah tells something unbelievable. Vayom Hashem, God speaks to her, by the way, not directly, through her teachers, through her rabbis, right? That's where she gets her message from. Shnei goyim bevitnech. There are two nations inside you. Interestingly, that is written differently. It says Geim. Geim is two proud ones are inside you. Yaakov is going to be the father of a proud nation, the Jewish people, and Esau is going to be the proud father of Edom, the other empires that are going to come out of him. Two very great, not just two nations, two great nations are inside you, and they are going to split up eventually when they come from you. Right now they're fighting inside you, and you should know that the two of them are going to go very different ways. What was the original plan? What was the original plan of Yaakov and Esau? So we're actually told that Esau was not born bad. He had inclinations. Everyone's born with different character traits. This famous argument of nature versus nurture. He was born with character traits. He was going to be a physical, earthy individual. Someone who had a flame inside him to create something in the physical world. He was born with red hair. And the red hair was indicative of his desire for strength and blood as well. But does that mean he was going to be a bad person? Far from it. What the way it was meant to be, this was plan A. Plan A did not work, unfortunately, as many times happens. Plan B kicked in. But what was meant to happen, my friends, was that Esau was meant to be the physical manifestation of God in this world, meaning he was going to work and hunt and make money. His descendants were going to be the primary physical and financial supporters of Yaakov. Can you imagine that? The entire world and all the generations that were going to come out of Esau were going to become the physical supporters of Yaakov, Jacob, and the spiritual world. And that's the way it was meant to be. And by the way, it started looking good. It came out good. He came out red. He came out Esav Asui. He was complete. He was a physical individual. He wasn't meant to be deep. He had a job to do, get the job done, work the field, hunt the animals, and his descendants would take that to the next level of being financially successful to support his twin brother and their descendants. And yet, at the age of 13, some say 15, you start to see a change very early on. Once they hit the teen years, until they hit the teen years, Yaakov and Esau, you couldn't tell the difference. Two fine young boys living at home with Imma and Ava. Yitzchak is the father and Rivka is the mother, and there they are getting their job done. All of a sudden, Esau starts to move away. He starts to neglect. He starts to defy. He starts to rebel. And that power of redness, the Adom, he's going to be the leader of Edom, which was actually a nickname given to him, not a complimentary one, right? Ended up swallowing him up. And he became obsessed with the physical world and only the physical world. And this battle of these two nations are going to carry on. The Jewish people and the Western world are going to be working together at times, but at times the clash between them, between Rome and Jerusalem, is going to be one of the biggest struggles for the Jewish people in world history. It starts here, right now. You've got to go to the seed of it all. If you don't understand what these two people are about, you're not going to understand where we are in the world right now and where we're going in the very, very near future. So this is the world that's being formed over here. Two nations, Shnei Geim, two proud people. People have got great pride in what they do, and Yaakov opts out. By the way, that's the reason that within the tribes of Jacob that are going to be born from him, you're going to have people who actually get involved in the physical, financial support of the other tribes. For example, Yisachar and Zevulun. Zevulun become the sailors, the ships, and they provide financial support to their brother Yisachar, who is studying in the tents. It wasn't meant to be that way. That's plan B. The way it was meant to be, my friends, was that that Esau would be the financial, physical supporter that comes forward. And yet, to Esau, it means nothing. And he spent an entire day, as he got older, hunting, came back extremely hungry. And there was Jacob making a pot of beans, of lentils, actually for his father, who was mourning his grandfather. His grandfather was spared, seeing this departure from his grandson Esau. So God removed him from this world 5 years earlier, I think, than he was meant to be. And so now we have a situation. And the situation is that Esau comes and confronts his twin brother. And he says, what are you eating over there? And he says, I got a bowl of beans, bowl of lentils, some red food. And he says, Haliteni, pour it down my throat. And he says, I'll give it to you, but it comes with a catch. I need your birthright because you came out first. And it used to be, at this point of history, that the priests were the firstborn sons. And Esau came out of the womb first. Came out of the womb first. And Yaakov came out holding onto the heel of his brother Esau. That's the Lashon Yaakov is Akev, heel. And this is going to be one of the secrets that the Jewish people are going to end up supporting and coming on the heels of the nations that come out of Esau. That is what we're going to have to suffer with for a long time. And it's only at the end of history, at the heel of history, that Yaakov is going to stand up. Because all of world history, if you will, is actually like the physical body. Adam Harishon was the head, the moach. And as you go through world history, you go down, 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 until you go hit the bottom of the foot. And that's Yaakov. So Yaakov and his descendants are going to end up at the heel of history, the end of history. At a time when people are the least sensitive, just like the heel of the foot is the least sensitive. You could put a pin in it, don't feel it so much, right? The sole of the foot, so too. At the end of time, when people are the least spiritually sensitive, then Yaakov is going to rise up. And that's when he's going to end up taking his full position that starts here right now. And so he says to his twin brother, sell me your birthright, because as I mentioned, the oldest son was the one who received the blessing, and he was the priest who was going to serve. That was the honor given to the firstborn son. And Esau said, why would I not? What's involved in this firstborn business? And he says, well, you're going to have to serve in the temple. Things change, by the way. End up going from the firstborn son, Reuven, to the priestly tribe of Levi. But at this point, that hadn't happened yet. And so he said, you're going to have to bring sacrifices. And goes, let's say I forget. Let's say I don't want to. He goes, then you're liable for the death penalty. So he says, you know what? I'm going to die spiritually. I might as well sell it now. I'm not going to fulfill that. And he sold his entire birthright for literally a bowl of beans. That's how little it seemed in his eyes. I know it sounds crazy. Why would you do that? Right? You have all of history waiting for you. How many people do we know who had so much promise, so much going for them? I spoke about it this Shabbat in my synagogue. I gave the speech, this Shabbat, the drasha, and I said, there's a game we always play, right? Whatever happened to? You ever play that game? Whatever happened to? Whatever happened to the friends I grew up with, all those smart, amazing kids, all the tremendous potential, and wow, some of those kids ended up nothing in their lives. It's quite shameful, and you don't understand. They were beloved by their teachers, maybe beloved by the rebellion and by their parents, and so much potential and promise, and then just kind of flushed it away through a series of bad decisions. What it's based upon, I don't know. Is it self-growth? Is it decisions they made, people they hung out with? Probably a little bit of everything. And then those people who, my goodness, they were the worst kids, always in trouble, always outside the principal's office, maybe kicked out of school, and they just managed to turn it around. Right? These are decisions that we get to make. There's many, many decisions that we get over life. Esau sells it for a bowl of beans. He just gives up everything. And world history has never been the same since this one transaction that happens in this week's Torah portion. And so Yitzchak continues in his way, and Esau continues his way. Esau marries out with Hittite women. He doesn't care With Ishmaelim, he doesn't bother, he just does his own thing. And Isaac has now become, legally, they did a transaction, the birthright of the Jewish people forever. And then suddenly the Torah portion starts to talk about a really weird topic, which if you just read it, you're like, what are they talking about? They start, my friends, to dig wells. Digging wells. Because Abraham dug wells and they filled them up. And now Yitzhak redigs those wells, digs his own wells. What is going on over here? So in some sense, it means that they got involved with different nations that were coming to them and providing a life source of water through his wells to visiting people. But there's a much deeper understanding of here, my friends. Wells represent the idea that you can dig, and create something new, working on individuals and finding goodness in people. So although Isaac never changed the world en masse, he dug wells and he took one person over here and one person over there and one idea over here, and he just created small pockets of goodness, of life-giving water. Water is a metaphor for Torah. And Mayim el Torah. Mayim, water, is always a reference to spiritual depths. So this well story wasn't simply just something that was happening in the garden of Isaac, right? This is telling us that Yitzhak changed the techniques and started to look for goodness in individuals, working on one, as opposed to his father's methodology, and his father had no problem with that, right? Abraham olid et Yitzchak. That's his way, that's how you want to do it. And really this exists today. There are some teachers who do well teaching, right? Many people, and operating as heads of companies, heads of yeshivot, heads of classes with a lot of people. And some people, they need to be working one-on-one with individuals, working with them and creating one person. You know, there's a beautiful story which reminds me of this. The Chafetz Chaim lived in Europe, and there's a famous story about him that he said, I really wanted to change the world, and I tried and I failed. So, I said to myself, I'm going to change my country, Poland. He lived in Radin, which is in Poland in those days. And he said, I tried, I couldn't, there was too many people. I said, you know what? Let me try Radin. Let me try my local town. I tried to change my town. Yeah, it didn't work. I said, you know what? Let me change my family. I tried to change my wife and my kids. I couldn't do it. I said, you know what? Forget about everyone. I'm going to just change myself. If I can dig myself and create some well of knowledge that can be spread to the world, maybe that can make a change. And he did. He influenced his family. He influenced Radin, his city. He influenced his country. The entire world to this day doesn't stop talking about the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim, the writings of Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan HaKohen. It's an incredible thing, right? It's just, are you inwardly, outwardly focused, or outward, inward? It's just two different ways. Both of them are good. Shivim panim laTorah. Some people are out there changing, moving, and some people are inside themselves. And that was Yitzchak, and that, my friends, was the wells. And Yitzchak digs the wells in the right places, and Esau marries. And then comes the time, which we're going to see a number of times in the Torah, and this is a very important concept, which I like to call the power of barachot, the power of blessings. There is a tradition that before a person leaves this world, they bless their children. Now, blessing occurs a lot more than just at the end of a life. But there's an idea of passing on the baton and giving a bracha to the next generation. And that's what Yitzchak needs to do. And as far as he's concerned, Esau was fulfilling his mission. Esau was a very, very good hunter. He was good at trapping. And the rabbis say, when it says Esau was good at trapping, it doesn't just mean he was good at trapping animals, which he was good at. It also means he was very good at trapping people with his mouth. He was the best con man out there. He was the one who was able to get his way and blab, as we say in England, I don't think that's the expression in America, blab his way right into the position, the money, the people, the wives that he needed. And his father was fooled by it. Now remember, this part of his life, we know that Yitzchak, Isaac, had become blind. And there's actually a very interesting discussion as to what made him blind. There's different opinions. One opinion was he became blind because when he, whatever this means, this is obviously metaphorical, but it's a beautiful, very deep idea. When he was lying on the slab, about to be sacrificed by his father Isaac, the angels started to cry. And the teardrops came down, went into his eyes, and in the future, those teardrops blinded him. Obviously, this is metaphorical, and we have to try to understand what these teardrops represent and why they made him blind in the future. Whatever it was, he was blinded to what was happening around him, but this blindness actually opened him up to allow the blessing to go to the right person. There's another opinion that there was a lot of avodah zarah from Esau and his wives, and the smoke started to blind him. The blindness was physical, but it's also metaphorical in terms of he was blinded to a lot of bad things and people who were around him. He wasn't so astute to these things. He was focused inwardly on his mission, and that's who he was. And yet it's time to bless. This idea of giving brachot starts with Abraham. God said to Abraham when he connected to him as a prophet of God after many, many years, that v'yeh bracha, you are going to become a blessing. What does that mean? That means, as the Torah, that up to now, God says, I am the source of all good things in this world are in my hands. I have the key to success, financial, emotional, spiritual. That is put into my hands. I'm giving you the keys to this world, Abraham. What was only with me is now with me and you. You have become my partner, and you have the ability to bless others. V'yeh bracha. You will become the source of blessing. There's many people today who look at the Jewish people and non-Jewish nations who try to treat us, many try to treat us badly, right? There are the Esau's out there too, who constantly want to kill us. But there's many nations who connect to us, right? Within the Christian world as well. I've met many of them, and they see us as a source of blessing. They want to connect to us. They want to receive our blessing because Abraham was told by God, whoever you bless will be blessed. And therefore, as descendants of Abraham through Isaac and Jacob, that key, the potential for that key was given to Klal Yisrael, given to the Jewish people. But with that comes a tremendous amount of responsibility and work on ourselves that we have to fulfill our mission. Because if we don't bless ourselves, we cannot bless others. And we do that through Torah and mitzvot. Anyway, so now the time comes for the bracha to pass forward to the next generation. And Yitzchak, Isaac is all ready to bless his son Esau, who is, as far as he's concerned, the oldest one, who is going to be the continuation of Isaac's mission in this world. Once again, Isaac wants his mission to continue through him, through his methodology, through his derech. So what does he do? He says, you know what? Go and hunt for me, because we know you're a good hunter. Bring me the food that I need, and I will bless you. It's very interesting. I always wondered about that. Why would that be? Why do you have to get a meal first? Just give him a blessing. Imagine the blessing is a car. You got a gift, give him the gift, right? Go give it to him. And so he doesn't do that. And he says to him, no, I want you to go and I want you to make me a nice meal. Because when I'm satiated and I feel good and I've made the blessings over the food, I can channel that happiness, that simcha, and pass it on to you. Right? This is what we do even to this day. Right? We're making l'chaims over things. We give blessings to each other. We come on Shabbat. Shabbat, we know, is the makor habaracha. It is the source of a blessing. Where do we, the Jewish people, receive our blessings from? One location, God. How? Through Shabbat. Shabbat, we say in L'chadodi on Friday night, is makor habaracha. God blessed the 7 days of the Torah. Hu berach et yom hashvi. He blessed the 7th day. What does that mean? Shabbat is the source of all blessings. I know everyone runs to rabbis and Kabbalists and say, give me a blessing for health and wealth or a shidduch. You know what? God says that's not a bad thing to do. The idea of going to a great person for a blessing goes back to biblical times, but there's even a better place. I can bless you directly, says God. Go to Shabbat. Shabbat is the Makor Bracha, and that's one of the reasons. There's a few reasons that we bless our children on Friday night. Because if Shabbat is the Makor Bracha, and we want to take some of that power and pass it on to our children, just like the priests will open their hands and bless us from the podium. For some people, communities every day, other people, Jewish holidays, right? Israel here, different opinions, but in the end, every parent wants to bless their children, and everyone wants to bring blessings to other people. And by the way, a blessing is a bracha. The word bracha comes from the word brecha. A brecha is a source. It's a source of water. When we say Baruch Ata Hashem, blessed are you God, what you're actually saying is that you, God, are the source of all blessings, of all goodness in this world. Actually, the word bracha is actually related to another Hebrew word. And if you've never heard this before, it's going to sound very, very weird. But the word bracha is related to the word birkayim, which means knees. Why would the word knees be found in the word bracha? Well, what pushes us forward? What propels us forward? Our knees. If your knees are out, you're out. We all know people. I'm already getting to that stage in my life where they're starting to creak a little bit. Knees are what propel us forward. That's a bracha. Birkayim bracha. A bracha propels us forward. If we don't have blessings in our lives, we don't have health and a parnasah and blessing, then what can we do? We're stuck as though we have no knees. We're stuck in one place. Angels don't have knees. They can't grow as individuals. They're just stuck. They're one-footed, they say, and they cannot move. That's why we try to be a little bit angelic when we pray, put our feet together. And so, we want the brachot, and Esau goes to hunt. But Rivka, the mother, knows the children better than her husband. And so she plays a switcheroo on Yaakov. And this switcheroo, which Yaakov does, was the right thing to do. His mother told him to do it, and Rivka, Rebecca, was a very holy, great Jewish woman. She understood of the potential that she was dealing with, and she realized that Esau had opted out. He wasn't. He opted out himself. And Yaakov was going to become the legacy, the next generation, the Tolda, the next generation, the descendant that's going to continue his father, Isaac, and his grandfather. So what does he do? He says, you're going to have to go get the blessing. But your brother's very, very hairy. So get some animal skin and put the animal skin on. And when you go and walk in, if he feels you, he's going to think you're Esau. And so she prepares the meal. So it's all there ready to go. He walks in. And as soon as he comes in, there's a very, very unusual and telling verse. And he hears the voice of Jacob. And he's like, you know, it feels like Esau. You feel like you're Esau, but your voice is different. And it says, chapter 27, verse 22, Vayomer, Hakol Kol Yaakov. The voice is the voice of Jacob, not the pitch, the tone, the way he spoke. He was respectful. He was nice to his father. He used God's name a lot. He blessed him. He's like, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, Jacob. Vayadayim. But I'm feeling over here, Yadayim Yadei Esav. The hands are the hands of Esau. Because he put the skin on. By the way, as a side point, this, my friends, is going to blow your mind. This is the root reason, say the Kabbalists, that we get dressed up in costume on Purim. This is the first time in Jewish history we see people dressing up, pretending to be other people. We get dressed on Purim, right? This is the first time. We're actually reenacting this little story because the descendants of Esau were going to include Amalek, which includes Agag, which includes Haman, and the descendants of Yaakov are going to include Mordechai, who came from the tribe of Benjamin. So there's a whole little play of Purim that finds itself over here, or pretending you're going to be something else, but really inside you know who you are. That's another discussion, not for now, but there's a lot of depth to that. What is this voice and hand? The voice is the voice of Yaakov, and the hands are the hands. The hands represent the hands to change this physical world. And you'll see that when Esau comes back, he's going to be very, very upset, but he's going to get a blessing as well. And his blessing is going to be that he's going to be able to create amazing things with his hands, and you can't deny it. The descendants of Esau have built towns, cities, countries, companies. You can't deny the greatness of Esau, but that's all they are. It's just a hand. It's just like a hammer and nail getting the job done. The voice of Yaakov represents the Jewish people and the voice that we cry out, the voice of Torah learning, the voice of prayer. And our mission is going to have to be a spiritual mission, changing the world through our voices, through our statements, and through our belief. And that's going to be the secret. So this statement over here, this innocuous statement sounds like Yaakov, doesn't feel like Yaakov, is actually the culmination and the beginning of a whole new period of world history that's going to go right through to the end of days till the arrival of the Messiah, the great grandson of Jacob himself. And Jacob, by the way, later on even became aware of the date, one of the few people in world history who was aware of the final date of the arrival of the Messiah, of the Mashiach. And that's where we go to. And the parsha continues with Esau coming in and realizing what had happened. Because as Isaac was exiting, Esau was entering. And now things get a little bit, excuse the pun, hairy. Now things really, I just made that up, I feel good. Now things really get hairy, right? Because Esau walks in, he realizes, and he breaks down, he lets out a cry that could be heard for miles. Actually, it could be heard for centuries and millennia. The cry of Esau as he realizes what he gave up on, and now he becomes hell-bent, excuse the expression, on killing his brother Yaakov for what he did. Yaakov, we're going to see, is about to escape for his life, and that we're going to talk about, God willing, next week. But for now, Esau walks in and he begs his father, and he says, please, take the bracha from him and give it to me. Now, if a bracha is merely like a gift you give someone, what's the big deal? Take the gift from Jacob and say, oops, wrong person, I was duped, and give it to Esau. But obviously he doesn't do that. He gives a bracha. Can give me a bracha too. He gives Esau a bracha of physicality in this world, but make no mistake. He realized what had happened. He realized what his son had done. He realized what his wife had done. It all became very, very clear. He understood everything. And they say at that moment, and Rashi mentions this, all of Gehenna, all of hell opened up below him and he saw everything clearly. He realized who Esau was, what he had become, what he was going to do to this world, how he had opted out. At that moment, he had become absolutely clear of everything he needed to know, and he realized that this wasn't a coincidence, and the blessing had gone to the right person, Yaakov, to Jacob. And Jacob, through his learning, sitting in the tents of his father Yitzchak, he was meant to become the firstborn, and the Jewish people to this day are going to be known as the Bnei Yaakov, whose name we're going to see soon. Next week it changes to Yisrael. It all comes from Jacob. And so we have the perfect trifecta. We have Abraham, who's chesed. We have Yitzchak, who's gevura, strength. And then we have Yaakov, tiferet. He is the grace and he is the blessing that brings it all together. If you will, you have Abraham, who's the thesis. Yitzchak is the antithesis. And Yaakov is the synthesis. He brings it all together. You couldn't just have chesed. Chesed it's just too far. It's too out there. Everyone's good. Everything's okay. Yes to Yishmael. Yes to you. Thousands of followers. But it can't just be gevura. Because gevura is strength. I'm just changing one person here, one person over there. You cannot make a change. It's too strong. The world cannot stand just on din, just on judgment. There'll be no one left. And so comes along Yaakov. And now Yaakov has received his mission that he's going to synthesize the chesed of his father, of his grandfather, the gevura of his father, and he's going to meld them together to make the perfect triangular vision of what a person, what the Jewish people are going to become. So we, the Jewish people, are the Bnei Abraham, and Yitzchak and Yaakov, each one of them, they say in the Amidah, in the Shemona Esrei, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. The famous question, why does it just say Elokei Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Because then you would think that each one had their own, united relationship to God. But it's not true. There's Elokei Abraham. There's one way to get through God, and that's the Abraham way. But there's another way, which is the Yitzchak way. But there's even a third way, which is the Yaakov way of doing it. Each one is legitimate, and every single person can figure out which way they connect to Hashem, to God, and to His Torah. Each one of them has validity in its own particular way. Okay. We've come to the end of our discussion. Thank you all for following and listening.